Rob Bluey, you guys, you lead the Daily Signal, right? And let's just pretend Karoline Leavitt, the incoming White House press secretary, calls you up and says, Rob, you guys have been very successful at the Daily Signal. You guys have been a presence in the White House briefing room. What should I do to change things up or adapt to the new world order? What would you suggest to her?
Sean, first of all, I think she should take a page from your playbook, where on day one you did not conform to the standards and norms that the Associated Press and some of those other established organizations insisted upon. I believe you told me that from the start you called somebody in the back of the room, the New York Post, as opposed to calling on the AP. You didn't end the briefing when they wanted the briefing ended. So I would continue down that path, but I would try to shake things up perhaps a little bit more. For all of those in the White House Correspondents Association who have tried to remove or exclude other conservative outlets, let's make sure that Karoline Leavitt and Stephen Chung and others demand that they have a presence in the room and maybe an actual seat, so they're not just standing on the sidelines there. Same thing goes when it comes to travel. Make sure that conservative media have a seat on Air Force One and Air Force Two. So when the president is going not only domestically, but overseas, that we're getting a truthful account of what's taking place on the trip. Because as we all know, those pool reports, those reports that are compiled by a single person and sent out to the entire Washington press corps can really drive the narrative about what happens on these trips. And so those are just a couple of examples.
All right, so let me ask you a question back, Rob Bluey. So they have these pool reports, right? So the president travels with 13 members of the media. And in order to get in the pool, you have to be willing to pay for the trip. So we're going to North Carolina on Air Force One. The Washington Post will say, great, we'll be the pool reporter today because they have to pay their portion of it. Would the Daily Signal be willing to play by those rules?
Yes, and in fact, in 2020, we did. We accompanied Vice President Pence on at least 3, maybe 4 trips. In part, that was happening because, remember, in 2020, a lot of news organizations were all discombobulated because of COVID. And as I understood it at the time, when they went to the White House Correspondents Association and asked if somebody would accompany as the pool reporter the vice president, they couldn't find anybody. So the White House then reached out to us and said, hey, would the Daily Signal be willing to do this? And we jumped at the opportunity because obviously it's something that we had been asking for in the past, to have a greater presence. And it's why we were so disappointed when Biden changed the rules and excluded us. Now, we were able to bypass some of those gatekeepers, and we were able to get credentials now for Congress and the White House. And I just had our first reporter at a Supreme Court hearing recently, Sean. And so having that access is so critically important, because if you don't have the access, then you're not going to be able to tell the story accurately.
Good for the Daily Signal.
I think that here's the crazy thing that they should do at the White House. They should say, okay, guys, here's the new seating chart. Here's the front row. Fox, Newsmax, Sinclair, Daily Signal, Daily Caller, and just make the whole row conservative media.
I tell you what,
I lose their minds.
Okay, so I have an op-ed coming out on this, and I will tell you, here's my suggestion. Why not just make it fair? First come, first serve. You want to sit in the front row? Sit in the front row. I don't really care. But my point is, I'm with you, Tim Graham. I don't care. Like, if we wanted to make it, but the idea that the AP, NBC, ABC get this monopoly on the front row, why? Why do you guys, so that you can get your clip? I don't care. So I'm either with Tim Graham of saying, going all the way and saying, you know what, we're redoing this. Just to give viewers a sense of this, back in the early 90s, the White House press office said, they threw up their hands and they said, we're done with the seating chart. We're done with the bickering. We're done with the infighting. You guys, the White House Correspondents Association, you guys said it. You pick who sits where. We don't care. I think that was a mistake. I understand why it was frustrating, but it's not their room. It's a government room controlled by the White House. They should claim it back. That's the point I'm making in the press, in the op-ed today, that this is where it should be. All right. That being said, Julie, do you have any, like, if Karoline Leavitt called you and said, what other changes should I make aside from the seating chart? Thoughts?
I would say blow it all up and bring the pool back.
Because the White House press briefing room is built over a pool.
That's right.
They would scratch their heads and they say, what do you mean the pool?
What are you talking about? Yeah. honestly, I'm a little bit more on the Tim Graham side on this. I really do think that it is important symbolically to do a gesture like this to really shake things up. And I would like to also see alternative media in
Yes.
the room as well.
Well,
Invite bloggers, invite podcasters, invite people that are not part of that normal sort of White House scene. I think that they should also have more briefings, talk to the media and the public more. Sean, I think Rob's suggestion about taking pages out of your playbook is the way to do it. You shook things up and they need to do that. I mean, Trump won for a reason. He has a mandate. There is no better time to shake things up in the media than right now. So, again, I don't want to play by the rules, and I don't think the American public wants
just so you guys understand how bad this gotten under Karoline Jean-Pierre, and Rob Bluey and the folks of the Daily Signal know this better than anybody. When I was press secretary, if you called Julie Gunlock, and I'm not saying like because I know you, but if you called and said, "Hi, I'm with WMAL, I want to cover the briefing today," pass granted. We never turned down anybody who wanted to cover a briefing, right? You can get a daily pass, a weekly pass, or what we call a hard pass, which means you have permanent access after undergoing a background check. Karoline Jean-Pierre cut 400 people's access, media people that were from independent media that weren't corporate media because they wanted to limit the access to those folks. They made it harder to get a badge. And I think that Karoline Leavitt on day one should restore it to what it was traditionally. And it is an untold story because this gets back to what Tim and Rob were saying, where the Washington Post is not going to complain if you limit the number of people in the room as long as they're still in it. Right? I mean, that's the dirty secret of this whole thing.
Yeah.
All right. I want to just, before we move on, because I want to talk drones for a second. But before we do that, I want to just ask you that you look at the statistics that we just went through, right? When YouTube TV came out, whatever it was, 5-10 years ago, it was a cheaper alternative than cable. You could cut the cord, get a lot of the channels for like $30 or $40 or whatever it was. They raised rates $10 a month last week. It is now going to cost you $82.99 a month to get YouTube television. So do any of you guys have it?
No.
I mean, I feel like it's now the same cost. And you don't have the same functionality as you do with cable in terms of like, flipping around, et cetera, the same way that you do on a cable. I mean, I wonder how much they are starting. I mean, once they become the competitor, the same person that they tried to beat, i.e., legacy cable, like I don't know how they're going to fare in this world anymore.
I've noticed a lot of differences. I was baking a lot of Christmas cookies this weekend, and so I had a streaming channel on and Prime, and there were commercials suddenly. Yeah. Have you noticed this?
Yes, of course.
During the NFL games, there always is.
Oh, it's so, but I mean, I was just watching, some sort of British, costume drama. And every 10 minutes, there was a big break. It was like a 2-minute break. That's new, at least for me. I haven't really seen that, but it seems like a lot of these streaming services are, as you just said, they're becoming what they were originally designed not to be. It's very frustrating for consumers.
All right, I want to get to drones. Before that, real quick, I want to go around the horn because we're talking about media. RFK is on the Hill this week, okay? And here's something that I thought was interesting, Tim Graham, that came from Axios, which, by the way, I don't want to get sued, so I don't know how often. But when you go to Axios and look at their newsletter, I'm surprised how many times pharma or a pharma, company is the sponsor of the outlet, right? But this is from Axios. Like RFK or not, he and the Make America Healthy Again MAHA movement's focus on chronic disease gets at an ugly truth. America is not as healthy as other countries. Predictions say that will get worse. The U.S. outspends other countries on healthcare by a landslide, but it's not buying us any longer. Healthier lives that people live in other countries enjoy will only become more true over time. By the numbers, America's global rank in life expectancy is projected to drop from 49th in 2022 to 66th in 2050, right? There's almost an acknowledgement by Axios and some other media announcers, like, yeah, he's kind of onto something.
Yeah, I mean, but they're, the hot story this morning was RFK's against the polio vaccine. I mean, they're going to treat him as radioactive. And You know, I will confess, this is one of those areas for me as an American citizen and old conservative. I just have trouble rooting for Kennedys.
Me too. Me too.
But, you know, there is something interesting. I mean, this is an actually really interesting point that you make, Sean, and that is anybody watching a network newscast, you know, if I hear that Jardiance song one more time, I'm going to break my TV. You know what I mean? There's so many pharmaceutical ads on the morning shows and the evening shows. There really ought to be a question mark about, how are these people covering big pharma?
Rob Bluey, would you ban pharma ads?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I will tell you this. I mean, there could be
free speech. You know?
Yeah, exactly. There is that debate. I don't like it. I don't like the fact that, I mean, Tucker Carlson has talked about this since leaving Fox, about how so much of the advertising is controlled by big pharma, and therefore you have executives who may want the actual newscasters to go a little bit easy on their criticism of them. But when it comes to RFK, I mean, I think that I actually think this is smart politics on Trump's part. I think he sees potentially a new coalition emerging here of moms, you know, who are concerned about what their kids are eating. The fact that we do have a crisis of health in our country, and you know, if he can get past, you know, some of the critics on the Republican and Democrat side, I really am rooting for him to go to HHS and shake things up, as we hope all of these nominees will do at the other agencies. Because if any agency probably needs radical reform, it's that one.
Julie Gunlock, why isn't RFK? I think I have an answer to this, but I want to hear yours. Why isn't a guy, I mean, to Tim's point, he's a Kennedy. You know, he's literally you know, he looks like one, he talks like, I mean, like, okay, why are Republicans embracing him so much?
Look, they like the message, and ultimately a lot of the MAHA message is self-control, right? It's about eating better, making better choices, and having government be transparent and honest. And that resonates with Americans, particularly moms. I will say I have a lot of reservations as someone who has written about vaccine safety for the Wall Street Journal, and I am very pro-vaccine. I worry a little bit, but I do think MAHA can do some good things. For instance, getting SNAP benefits to not cover junk food and sodas. Why,
crazy,
as a taxpayer, am I paying for the obesity epidemic? This is insane. The other thing is we have a problem in this country with certain harm reduction, like vaping, which is 95% better than combustible cigarettes. That's something that, and the FDA has been a barrier to the innovation in this particular area of alternatives to combustible cigarettes. I would love it if we could reform that process so that people who are smokers have alternatives. There are a lot of things that MAHA can do that I endorse and approve of. Kennedy makes me a little nervous. I'm a little like Tim in this way, but I do think there's potential.
You know, the funny thing is, I listen. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, you know, I don't smoke or vape. I don't drink a lot, but there's something fun about the idea that I can be a rebel for having a cup of Fruit Loops.
You know, by the way, I was listening to a podcast this weekend, and the doctor who was on that has done a lot of research into what Julie was talking about, and said 10%. And I don't, so again, just full disclosure for the lawyers out there. I will give you the podcast, but I can't tell you if it's true or not. His claim was that 10% of Coca-Cola's products come from SNAP benefits, meaning it's poor people using food stamps to buy Coca-Cola products, which are clearly.
Let me tell you, the soda companies, they fight against, because a lot of lawmakers have said, we need to stop this. And it's the soda companies that are the ones saying, no. And then they get into all this, it's free choice, and it's paternalistic, and we can't.
No, it's my tax money.
Yeah.
Not your choice. It's my money. You want to take my money, then I get a say in what it gets used for, and at least make the people healthy. All right, before we go, let's just simply go around the horn. These drones that are flying over northern New Jersey, largely over President Trump's property there, and military bases, including Pickaninny Armory. Tim Graham, is this incompetence or lying from the government?
Well, their record of incompetence makes you worry about them lying. You know, this in particular, this Homeland Security Department, who said there is no border crisis,
and no China balloon
drone crisis. Yeah, So yes, I think there's a lot of skepticism. I would say in this case, Sean, the networks have been skeptical because they know the people are skeptical. So you know, this has gotten more attention than you might have expected. It's up there with the CEO murderer in terms of the kind of story that they're doing on a day-by-day basis.
Rob Bluey, quickly, incompetence or lying?
I think it's lying, Sean. I mean, with all the technology we have, I mean, you can't tell me that the government doesn't know more about this than
they're not even
letting
acting
on.
like they're trying. Julie Gunlock, incompetence or lying?
You guys are crazy. It's aliens. It's all aliens.
Okay, that's still, they could
My
still
answer.
be incompetent. They could either not know it is or be lying about it. All right, guys. Great panel discussion this morning. So insightful on how the media and the White House briefing room works. So thank you for that. By the way, guys, huge guests coming this week. RNC Chairman Michael Whatley, Victor Davis Hanson, Mike Davis from the Article 3 Project. I put in my Substack, SeanSpicer.com. Do me a favor, go subscribe right now. Read last week's column. It tells you how to get inauguration tickets. Like I said, I can't get them to you. I can tell you how to get them. It's in SeanSpicer.com. The Friday episode, I'll try to repost it again tomorrow. It's free to sign up. You're always welcome to become a VIP member or gift one to someone. So thanks for being here and kicking off your week for us. I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow. RNC Chairman Michael Whatley will join us. Have a good night. Thanks for being with us. See you tomorrow.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.